Hey, I'm Chris, and dang it, that's not it. Hold on. Where is my tab? All right, here we go. I got it. Hey, I'm Chris, the Outreach Pastor, and welcome to episode 29 of the Reunion Church podcast. This is Sunday Recaps, where we discuss a couple key points from the previous service and help you navigate the spiritual formation process.
Are we really only on episode 29?
Yeah, actually, surprisingly, we skipped a few weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We passed our 25. That's kind of a big deal. But yeah, maybe one day we'll get to 100.
I think the bigger celebration is like 25 subscribers, but yeah.
That's true. We're not there. Anyway, for the 17 of you that are out there listening still, last Sunday we actually talked about one of probably our most important value, arguably, and it's the idea of how we multiply through discipleship by way of the head, heart, and hands of Christian living. And actually, Andrew kind of broke this down and shared this because this is kind of his go-to value. It was the first one that he pitched, first one he likes, arguably his favorite. Andrew, can you kind of give a little feedback as far as how last night went overall with the teaching and the groups, and then kind of what people need to know about this value that's kind of our core value?
Yeah, so this value, like it's our core value because like this is the call of every Christian. Every Christian is to multiply. And like the task in Matthew 28 is to go therefore and make disciples. And so everybody says that they disciple. But the problem is that very few actually have a process. And so what we've done is we've said, hey, this is our process. It's not the only process. It's not the only way to kind of do things. It's our process of discipleship and how we go through and helping people understand what it means to disciple someone, and that we help them understand the head, not only the intellectual components, but then also the heart attitudes, knowing what you believe, why, like, and then the coaching aspect, letting someone into your life to kind of speak into it, and then the hands actually going out and doing it. And I know we've talked a lot about this because, I mean, this is just what we do. Like we're not great at a lot of things, but like the one thing that we will do our very best at will be discipleship.
Mm-hmm. And just to elaborate on that a bit, why is that the heart of Reunion Church? Like there's a lot of ministries and churches that kind of have of all their values, there's one that they lean on the most. Why for us is this the one we lean on? Because for a lot of churches, it may be, a fantastic worship service. It may be their kids ministry. It may be things that are more appealing to more people. Why discipleship, like, at all?
I mean, primarily because number one, it was given to us as a command, first and foremost, of like from Jesus, of like, go therefore make disciples. And this was his model of when he went out. His model wasn't just preaching to the large audience at scale. His model was part of that. But then more importantly, the way that he really changed the world was by investing into those 12 and then into a smaller group of 3 that he dedicated and poured 3 years into a several different step process, which you can listen to one of our other podcasts that we've talked about, the come and see, come and follow, come and be process. But like Jesus taught them not only the knowledge, he taught them the heart attitudes and coaching, and then he gave them opportunities to go and do it as well. And so, this is a huge thing because if you don't know how, you're never going to go and make disciples.
Right.
We have to learn how. We've all had tasks that we've been given before of like at work. Often I've been given tasks where I'm not equipped and I don't know how to do this. And it's a terrible feeling.
Oh yeah.
And I'm a 3. So often I put myself in these situations on purpose because on the Enneagram, like that's imposter syndrome is just something that we live by.
Right.
Like, hey, let's go and like just fill these things out. But we'll get into a situation where it's like, man, I have no idea how to actually do this at all. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting in a component where I'm like, I really need some help. I need someone to show me how to actually do this job. That's how I got started in sales. Actually, I got an interview with a really high up tech company. And all I did was I downloaded a trial and acted like I knew what I was talking about in the interview. And I did well enough that they believed me and hired me. And then I got in the job. I was like, I don't know what I'm actually doing. Now, luckily, I was able to kind of pull it off enough to the point where they were like, hey, you're actually fine, because the rest of my team sucked too. Like they weren't good.
Oh yeah.
but none of us were doing great. And it took actually someone coming alongside me and actually showing me how to actually do the job. Like, not only did she actually give me the intellectual skills of actually selling itself, but then, hey, let me show you how to actually do this. Why would you do that? And it gave me accountability on it as well.
Yeah.
And, challenged me and gave me opportunities with different aspects to try. And that was like, the business world has really taken hold of what they're calling mentorship, which is really discipleship. And the church, often we've kind of like,
and all that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the church, we've kind of fallen away from this point of like, man, we need to go plant more churches. We need to go do these things. We need to go save the world. But we don't know how we're supposed to do that. And then we bring up this word discipleship, and we don't even know how we're supposed to even do that. We say, let's go do life on life. Well, what does that even actually mean? And so we've broken down this process on like, hey, this is why, because we believe this is a model that we've seen Jesus actually teach.
Mm-hmm. And, we've talked about it again and again, because it's kind of literally our go-to value, I'd say, as far as actionable values. First question for people who are probably new to the podcast: how do I do that? I get that I need to do it, but what do I need to do to be obedient to this command, right? Because there's a lot of commands in scripture, but this one's repeated a lot. What can people kind of do to be obedient to this command from Jesus?
Yeah. So 2 Timothy 2:2 says, and the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrusted to reliable men who will then be qualified to teach others. And there's really almost a 3-generation aspect of discipleship that it really takes on. So number one is that you have to have someone teaching you in the first place. A lot of times you don't have a mentor. A lot of Christians have said that they've never been discipled. And so go and ask someone to mentor you. Go and ask someone to meet with you weekly, to meet with you on a weekly basis and just go over life, either a book or something, but that you just meet with them weekly. And a lot of people don't know how to even do that.
Yeah.
But you need to have someone investing into you. So that's the first part where Paul says, and the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrusted to reliable men. Yeah. Now it's plural. So there's multiple men in that component as well. So you're never supposed to do this alone. Ideal discipleship comes in a group because you're able to learn from each other. As iron sharpens iron, you hold each other accountable. Paul and Barnabas were discipling each other and working with each other. That's the Paul and Barnabas effect.
Right.
And so they were at a same spiritual level, and they sharpened, and they were kind of learning and growing from each other as well. So everyone needs to have kind of a Barnabas, someone that you're kind of walking alongside, and ideally under that same mentorship as well. And then entrust to reliable men who will then also be qualified to teach others. So then you take what you're learning and just pass it on to one more person. Well, I don't know enough. I don't know. Well, listen.
Yeah. No one does.
Yeah. They're not. And also usually, like when we talk about this in the groups, people aren't looking for you to really have the answers. They're looking for that vulnerability. They're looking for you to walk alongside, and they're looking for empathy, not sympathy. Empathy. Sympathy is when someone's down in the grime and like in a hole, and you're looking at them like, man, that sucks. And then you walk away, right?
Right.
It often looks like, oh, I'm praying for you.
Yeah.
I'm praying for Ukraine, praying for all those people over there, right? Like that's sympathy. No one wants sympathy. Okay. Empathy is, man, that's a tough spot. I'm going to go down there with you. I'm going to go down in that muck. I'm not going to stay in there with you, but me and you are going to get out of this together.
Yeah.
And you come and you exhort, you encourage, you rebuke, and help them get out of that together with them. That's empathy. And that looks like, man, that's a really tough spot to be in. I don't know exactly what that feels like, but I've had similar situations. Mm-hmm. How are you dealing with that today? Let's walk through this together. And it's very uncomfortable for people. But that's the task of discipleship, where you literally get into people's lives and walk with them in it together. All you have to be is one step ahead of someone. If you're saved, you are one step ahead of someone who has never heard the gospel before. Just share with them what you know.
Mm-hmm. And, even just thinking about that, like based on the responses we've had during this value series, we've heard a lot of things of like, well, my faith is personal. It's kind of like an emotional state of like, well, it's just personal to me. I don't really worry about the head knowledge or what books or whatever. And then you have other people where they're very text-based. They're very, this is how things are. This is how we should do things. And then you have other people who it's like, hey, I haven't read the Bible in years or months, but I just do stuff at church. I just run around and do stuff that's actionable. Why is it that we need all three? Like, why do we need to do it all three in the first place? Like, is it okay for a Christian just to live out obediently with 1/3 of that command?
Yeah. So the head, heart, and hands, it's critical that you're balanced and being discipled in all three of those components.
Yeah.
And so when you're discipling someone or being discipled, you can't just have just head knowledge. You can't just go to Bible studies and think that that's good enough.
Right.
Head knowledge is very important. You need to know the truths. You need to know theology. But if all you have is head knowledge, you're just a professor, and that's useless. No one's getting saved inside of a campus as from a professor. Okay. And if you just have the head knowledge and just the heart, man, at that point you're just pews. Like you're the church hoppers. Yeah. You're just saying give, right? And so the people that are saying like, yeah, it's my personal relationship, it's only between me. Usually those people, that's a sign to me that they've never been discipled. Because people who don't know how to share their faith, people who feel comfortable with it, it's a sign you've never had someone model for you what that looks like. Mm-hmm. And so if someone's saying that excuse, it clearly means they've never been discipled before. Mm-hmm. And then if you just have, like, for instance, just the heart, if you've just been coached in life, you become very critical. You can have an idealism of what you think is actually the right way because you've only seen one person do something.
Right.
I've been listening to this podcast that some people have kind of recommended to me recently, the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill.
Yeah.
And inside of it talks a lot about very strong, charismatic leaders where their character was not developed before their charisma. Okay. So they're very charismatic leaders, but their character was not developed enough. Discipleship helps develop your character. But these leaders, they taught everyone one way to kind of do things. And we've seen this across the board where people will hold on to their preference of how this denomination, how this church group runs and does something, and they feel like that's the only way. Yeah, because you've only been discipled in that way, and you haven't had the knowledge of other places teaching you that, and you haven't had the hands, the experience to go out and actually do something different. Yeah. And then if you just have the hands, if you're just going out and just serving, pretty soon, if you're just serving all the time, you have burnout because you're not getting filled out. This is the volunteer culture that we see right now, that a lot of churches just enforce. It's like, hey, come serve, and they think that's discipleship. The struggle with that is that it creates a real burnout culture because I'm just serving, and the only way I'm getting anything is when I sit in Sunday services, but that's not enough. That's not discipleship. That's not true discipleship of someone investing into me.
Right. Going to a baseball game doesn't make you a baseball player.
Yeah. And so if you just have the hands and the experience of serving, you will get burnt out. If you just have the hands and the heart, again, you will become a very strong charismatic, but without the knowledge, and you can hurt someone. You'll be very passionate. You'll have a lot of zeal without knowledge. And then probably the most dangerous aspect, if you just have the experience and only your experience and the knowledge, you went to Bible college or you have this knowledge, and that's the only knowledge that you have, you will be a carnivore. You will be someone that consumes and hurts people.
Right.
Because you haven't had someone coach you through the hard times, coach you through the other ways, let you see the other experiences of what's around. And so there's a lot of harm that is usually done in that, where people think it's my way or the highway. You have to get behind my vision, my direction. And there's been a lot of harm that because they have enough knowledge, they have their experience from the hands, but no one's coached them well. My mentor always taught me, if like, you will preach your harshest sermons when you're young. And that is very true because a lot of times you're not being coached on the rest of life of like, man, you can't go around talking about like around suicide when you know like certain people and you haven't had to walk people and parents through their teen committing suicide or attempting suicide. There's a sensitivity that a coach and a mentor will walk you through on those things.
Yeah. And even just taking that example of, suicide, for instance, it kind of touches on all three of those areas where it's the head knowledge of, no, I know what this is like. I've been there sort of thing. I understand suicide, right? We understand, having known people that have passed away from that. there's a hard aspect of, I know the emotions, reeling through it, right? Going through it with someone, walking day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute with somebody who's grieving from that. And then the actionable steps of like, here's how I was there for somebody. And now we approach the topic differently, having the experience that was hands-on, the knowledge, the heart for people from that. So I think having that holistic approach to ministry is what really sharpens, somebody into a key player versus either being, a sideline coach or being a cheerleader or even just being the guy that shows up to a baseball game to have a hot dog. Like, those people are fine. They can show up to a game, but they're not an actual athlete. They're not an actual player in the game, Any final thoughts when it comes to Head, Heart, Hands before we kind of wrap things up here, Andrew?
Yeah, discipleship is not a program. It's a process. And a lot of times people think they've been discipled because they've gone to a group that's met for, 3 months. And, the reality is that might be part of a discipleship, but that's a program. Yeah. Discipleship is a process, a lifelong process, and that people need someone to care for them, to invest into them, to invest into their souls. And that comes down to us. Every Christian needs to do this. The world is very hungry. Christians are hurting for this. And so it takes people just stepping up and discipling others. And so you can't use the excuse of like, well, I don't have time. Listen, Jesus didn't give you that excuse when you had time. This was a command. And to not disciple is direct disobedience to God. And the fact that so many Christians have never discipled someone, so many pastors have never discipled someone, it is a direct disobedience and sin to God. You must be discipling. You must be walking people in their life with Christ.
Right. And you can even flip it when you talk to somebody and they bring that up of like, well, what do you have time for? If not the most important command from God, like, what do you have time for? You have time for this, that, those things, not why you're a Christian in the first place. Like, it's kind of crazy. And, as we kind of go through this value series, guys, we're actually going to be diving a little more deeper into leadership development, what it looks like to have those conversations and to be led by somebody, and then to also lead others, along with some other values of ours that matter a lot. So definitely check that out. Sundays at 5:30, like always, at the Reunion Coffee House. But we do have a couple events coming up that actually, maybe Andrew, you can kind of give some details on and an update as far as our Church on the Move situation. So, we have our launch service officially announced. It's going to be on April 10th. What's that going to kind of look like? Because we have some people that have been at Reunion Church for a minute, some people who have heard about it and kind of been on the fence to go. What's the launch service going to actually look like day of?
Yeah, we're hoping, ideally, we're still praying that this finalizes all the way through, but we will be at the Bison Ridge Rec Center. Ideally, we meet at 4:00, and we'll have a bigger space for kids ministry. And then other than that, it'll look pretty much the same. It'll be a bigger space, though, a little more set up, more kind of put together for us and not so jammed. That is what it's been. Yeah. So it'll be nice. We're saying it's a launch service because it's kind of a good restart for us, letting people know we're in a new area for us. And we've never had an official launch. And so this would be like our official launch. So we know when our 1-year anniversary is and all that stuff, because we just started meeting. And so this is kind of like our spot of being like, hey, this is our official, we are a church,
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have all those details in the show notes and description of the video. So go ahead and check those out. We'll have links and all that. And then, of course, the one that everyone knows about, Resurrection Sunday. Is our church doing anything for that? Are we going to have a service for that?
Yes.
Cool. So we'll have that. I thought you would say more. We'll have more details down there. It's going to be the following week for those of you who forget, like me. April 17th, Resurrection Sunday. We will have something along with Passover. Again, we'll have those details down below. And last thing last, we have an update as far as our Church on the Move goes. Our situation with trying to move things here and there and everywhere. Andrew, can you kind of give some details on that big update?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've got, I'm like, it's church. You were just throwing me off with Church on the Move title.
Sorry, I used church words.
Yeah.
We have a trailer. Okay. Does that help you?
Thank you. Yeah. We got a trailer. Thank you, LifeGate. Again, we have a great trailer that'll help us.
I should just text you during
storing
this,
stuff.
like, hey, talk about this.
So yeah.
Yeah. LifeGate, gifted us with a trailer. We're super excited to have that and to help with our church as we're expanding. We're growing. We're getting more supplies, more gear, building up our worship aspect, our sound equipment. So need a place to put all that stuff. So the trailer is a huge help with that. So we really appreciate it with the whole team at LifeGate. So as far as normal stuff goes, women's discipleship is still going on. It's weekly Wednesdays. Get in touch with Amber and Hannah. And then, of course, we appreciate your support. As Andrew kind of mentioned earlier, we're approaching, I guess, our official quote unquote year. And we put quote in because we don't really know when we started, but we're picking April 10th. That's kind of our day. So we're sticking with it. So really appreciate the support. If you guys do want to support the mission and the vision of Reunion Church, go to our website. It's down in the description and you can tithe and just support us there. Along with just prayer. We're going to need it, especially reaching our 1 year anniversary. There's a lot of pressure for churches to make it to those first 5 years. And some days we feel it and some days we don't. And I think approaching our anniversary is going to be, that time frame where it's going to be high pressure. There's going to be a lot of, questions and spiritual attacks. So definitely keep us in prayer. Lift us up when you get the opportunity, when you get the chance, because I know we'll need it going to that anniversary. So with that said, I think we'll wrap it here and we'll see you guys Sunday at the coffee house.
Toodles.